As he heard his classes, he was always doing the deed and doing it better. As he paused with his piece of chalk at the blackboard before writing on it, he was thinking of the spot and whether the water was not deeper and the fall straighter, a little higher up or a little lower down. That Hedston's criminal actions make him vulnerable to the blackmail of Rogue Riderhood, with whom he eventually perishes, demonstrates the inescapability of the consequences of his destructive emotions in the novel which is perhaps Dickens' darkest portrayal of Victorian society. Dickens' depiction of a man obsessed, unable to resist his baser motives or to control his emotions, has been seen by some biographers as a subject of some personal interest to Dickens, who suffered from an emotional decline in later life after the irretrievable breakdown of his marriage and the pressures of living a life of deception as an esteemed public figure who is involved in a relationship with a young actress. Dickens' public readings of extracts from his novels, which cemented his celebrity status in Victorian culture, even as it subjected him to an exacting schedule of touring and performance, also took a dark turn at this time. Previously, he had favoured reading comic passages, or those with elements of pathos, such as the death of Little Nell. But in the last years of his life, he developed a penchant for reading The Murder of Nancy from Oliver Twist. Resisting the advice of friends and family on the unsuitability of this passage, Dickens persisted, and scenes of mass fainting in the audience could sometimes occur. It was considered one of Dickens' most powerful and affecting performances. The demands of the Sykes and Nancy reading, as it was known, were even blamed for hastening his death by those closest to Dickens at this time. The powerful attractions of his villains and an almost prurient interest in the acts of criminality, it seems, even extended to the author himself. But what of bad women in Dickens? Villains like Hortense in Bleak House are relatively rare. She is a criminal whose motives and mental processes are never given prominence. Her main function in the novel is to commit the murder for which other more sympathetic characters seem possible suspects. Women who transgress in Dickens novels are more likely to be gender offenders than criminals, as one critic has put it. That is, their villainy consists in subverting the expected behaviour of wives, mothers and ladies, for which a certain amount of duplicity or deviousness is required. Sometimes they are spurred on by the mistreatment or betrayal they have suffered from men, such as Miss Havisham in Great Expectations, or Edith Dombey in Dombey and Sons. Revenge is a strong motive for these women, and they are shown to have the implacable purpose to carry it through. Monstrous mothers or mother figures also feature as instances of female villainy in Dickens. The evil Mrs. Steerforth, for instance, is directly responsible for the nurturing of the Byronic villain Steerforth in David Copperfield. And it is often forgotten that Monk's relentless pursuit of Oliver Twist was due to his mother bequeathing him her, quote, unquenchable and deadly hatred on her deathbed. Interestingly, such women are also thus implicated in the suffering of other women, such as Miss Havisham's corrupting influence on Estelle, or Mrs. Steerforth's indirect responsibility for her son's treatment of little Emily. To conclude, one critic has suggested that the major crime in Dickens is the betrayal and subversion of charity and love. More recently, in his wonderful book called Other Dickens, John Bowen has described Dickens' commitment to the virtues of benevolence, reciprocity, selflessness, compassion, and trust, values which depend on the existence of a community of others in which to develop and flourish. Throughout his work, the villains and rogues are consistently those characters who reject, undermine, or conspire against these values of benevolent reciprocity, who act to rupture community in all its forms. The fact that Dickens' villains are at least as memorable as his angelic children, or stalwart heroes, demonstrates that the threats they embody retain a powerful hold on our imagination, just as their threats to the virtue of community and compassion can never be fully contained or irrevocably defeated.